The conclusion of the school year finding it was adventure time for the grade school students, the first and second graders boarding Gary's 46-passenger school bus for a 90-mile journey to the Wichita Zoo. The exhibits numbering over 2,500 species including the usual suspects, lions, tigers, elephants, and the relatively new children's petting zoo consisting of mostly farm animals. A glass-enclosed lowland gorilla domain and a magnificent indoor rainforest with waterfalls and tropical unhindered birds, an impressive focal point for the students as well as the bus driver. Mrs. Hill, Thompson, Albright, and Feaster's students displaying their best behavior, Gary having volunteered to accompany the group as a rear guard to assure that no stragglers were left behind. Discovering the real joy was the expressions on the kid's face. Another year and another end-of-year grade school class destination for Gary. Mrs. Cantrell and Gallagher's third grade class was ready, having waited all year for this class activity. A trip to the Alabaster Caverns, 6 miles south of Freedom, Oklahoma. Gary having positioned the bus on the west side of the gym, watching the class board for the 60-mile journey. The students yet to realize the magnitude of their adventure. It had been over 12 years since Gary had acquainted Freedom and the Alabaster Caverns, and was still awestruck when crossing the Cimarron River. He never mentioned to anyone that he and fellow band member Jerry Willis had attempted to fish adjacent to the bridge crossing, only to discover later what the locals knew. There were no fish because of the contamination from the sulfate and chloride mining upstream. Arriving at the Alabaster Caverns State Park, the property being one of just 3 venues in the world where black veins of alabaster are found, the other 2 localities were in Italy and China. The state of Oklahoma purchasing the 200 acres in 1953, the property being used as a nuclear fallout and emergency supply storage shelter. In 1956 it was designated a state park and open to the public. The students having been introduced to a uniform state park guide in the visitors center giving a presentation, the lady annotating the exhibits of the various types of gypsum mineral and the caverns, relating that the use of the cavern during the late 1800s was a haven for outlaws during a period when the Oklahoma Panhandle was called the Oklahoma Badlands. The guide, with the class in accordance, proceeded down the path to the entrance of the cavern abyss, disclosing the temperature inside the 3/4 mile of cavern length, ranged between 52 to 58 degrees. Depending on the season, adding the journey through the cavern would take 1 hour. Once endowed within, the entrance no longer providing a detectable source of afferent, the walkway course broadcasted with the dimly lit effervescent lights. The once bubbling class now strangely silent as they filed into the largest room of the cave. 60 feet in length and 50 feet high, the guide pointing out the veins of alabaster. Continuing, the observant group soon reaching a wooden bridge, finding a stream flowing beneath. The water entering from a hidden source and exiting the same. The guide pointing out the residency of 5 species of bats that hung from the heights of the promontory cave. Reaching a midpoint, the group was halted, the criterion again explaining to the group, they were about to experience total darkness. The lights in the cavern would be extinguished briefly and not to be afraid. A deafening silence among the third graders was prevalent, the lighting within the cavern was removed. A total darkness unveiled, and with the stillness of silence, a surreal environment of total abandonment was present. Each person acquainting themselves alone in a capsule-darkened world for the first time. Even Gary appreciated the demonstration, an experience of solitude, a taste of reality. The restoration of light, the sound of voices finding a relief for many who never experience the perception of absolute darkness. Continuing the journey, the guide referencing several ancillary passages that branched out from the tour's main access route, 10 other small but aurora-reaching openings, providing entrance. The hour-long tour consummating, the class arising from the profundity of the earth, once again imbuing the blue sky and verdant Oklahoma air. A tram ride back to the visitors center, the provided sack lunch in hand, the third graders finding the spacious grounds a place of contentment to relate their recent experience with each other. The bus driver approached the two teachers relating that some of the kids wanted to explore more of the park's realm, Gary telling them he would see if it was permissible, and if so he would take the group on an expedition to find some of the ancillary entrances to the cavern. An affirmation from the two instructors found the campaign on a search mission, finding 8 of the 10 well-concealed openings, but only 2 with a width for human access. A further exploration, Gary chaperoning the students on a venture to find some of the other natural attributes of the awe-inspiring park's domain, discovering a trail leading to other caves and the renowned Natural Rock Bridge. The adventurous class activity concluded, once again finding the school bus returning to Kiowa, its occupants having obtained an adventure and a better understanding of nature, and a bus driver with an acknowledgement of the rewards that those in the teaching profession experience every day. An impressive experience for Gary. The 4th and 5th grade class were destined to travel the 35 miles to the Great Salt Plain Lake, 5 miles east of Cherokee, Oklahoma. Its presence having the distinction of being the only location in the world where salt crystals in hourglass inclusions are found. The students able to forage on the salt plain bordering the 9,000-acre lake fed by the Salt Fork of the Arkansas River. Mrs. Miller and Elwood escorting the class, the bus halting in the digging area of the desolate expanse of the salt plains, Gary having visited the state park with his family, but preferring the lake over the crystal-inflected salt flats. The lake was without a doubt the most unusual one in Oklahoma, with a prevalence depth of only 4 feet, a dam on the east withholding the reservoir of water. The 4th and 5th graders lost their enthusiasm shortly after arriving. It was understandable, digging for salt crystals wasn't very exciting. Gary made some attempt to enact some stimuli from the boys by relating that during World War II, this area was a bombing range, and in all probability there might still be ordnance just below the surface. The itinerary for the return called for a stop at the dam and its picnic area for a sack lunch, with a hesitation at Kagelman Field, an Air Force Base training station. The runway at the base was a facility used by the small jet trainers stationed at Vance Air Force Base in Enid. The journey home concluding, unlike the other class end-of-year trips, the students brought home souvenirs, if not in a sack. Wearing the salt on their clothing is a testament to the Salt Plains State Park.